Happy Sunday to you. I'm back today to expound a little bit more on yesterday when I was talking about my approach, and I believe the best approach to the housing crisis, not just, of course, across the country, Canada, across the continent, where so many people are experiencing homelessness and, frankly, the difficulties of communities who are a part of people among us, residents, who are experiencing homelessness. It's not pleasant for anyone involved. And I talked yesterday kind of the contrast between, this idea of like an earned merit model, that idea that, if you didn't earn housing, then I guess it's too bad for you. Housing is something, you got to earn, you got to work for it, etc. So that is one, I guess, legitimate approach to it that many people take. And I would just encourage the housing first approach instead. Now, here's something that a lot of us haven't really grappled with, and it's this. Housing is a human right in Canada. So I'm just going to put that there, and that's really what I want to unpack a bit today. Housing is a human right in Canada. That happened kind of officially in 2017. So pretty recently, Canada created the National Housing Strategy. I've just got it up on my computer here because I want to make sure I get all this right. Now, the National Housing Strategy, this federal program, we talked about the three levels of government just a couple days ago: federal, provincial, municipal. I am running for mayor in the municipal stream, you could say, of government. But that is not to say that municipal simply needs to, and this is what I've been saying, point to the province to do something and the province point to the federal government to do something. In fact, we had a really groundbreaking announcement just a couple days ago that our provincial government in New Brunswick is partnering with the federal government. Now it makes sense to me. I was kind of I'm hearing different numbers. Now it's becoming clear. 150 million committed by the province, 150 million committed by the federal government to create more affordable housing and to help with transition housing. And that is why I want to present yesterday, today, and tomorrow with examples the ways that municipalities in the Municipal District of St. Stephen really need to get on board, show some courage, show some initiative, and make sure we are a part of solving our homelessness crisis right here in St. Stephen. It can happen, and tomorrow I'll give you examples of Peterborough, the Crossing, other places where this has happened quickly with a local government that is committed to it, because we acknowledge together as residents that this is not good for anyone, what is happening. So that's happening here. But in 2017, the federal government, back to that, committed to the National Housing Strategy. Now, what that did and what that said was it made a goal so that everyone in Canada would have access to housing that meets their needs and that they can afford. Now, this is pre-COVID, of course, so Canada had no idea what was coming. In 2019, under that umbrella, the National Housing Strategy, this actually went a step further, and what happened in 2017 was the National Housing Strategy Act was passed. So it became policy, and what that did was it recognized that the right to adequate housing is a fundamental human right affirmed in international law. So that's why I say housing is a human right. We need to think about housing, and when we see people suffering from homelessness and not having housing, we need to see that friend, neighbor, fellow resident of St. Stephen as a violation of a human right. That's why, if we take a look at this differently, if we say, housing is not something that you deserve, adequate housing is something that is a right in Canada. How are we going to participate in making sure that that person's rights are extended to them in this form? I want to talk more about rights towards the end of this little session today. But what happened in 2019 when Canada assented to that is they said it's a human right, and that means that what they were doing was they were recognizing the right that was described in something called the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, or ICESCR. Now, what is that? That is an international convention, basically. It's an international covenant on that. That's what the covenant provides guidance on making housing sustainable for human dignity in the form of 7 fundamental pillars. Now, over 170 countries have ascribed onto this. It's different in practice, of course. You can sign on to anything. Many countries signed on to it back in the 60s, back in the 70s, haven't done much with it. But again, when Canada formed the National Housing Strategy in 2017, and then in 2019 passed this act that acknowledges the ICESR, that means that it is something that as Canadians we ascribe to and we have essentially ratified. Now, your first question should be, as was mine when I was learning about this, was what is adequate housing then? If it's a right, and we could say it's easy to say housing is a right, well, what about adequate housing, and how would you define that? Glad you asked. There are 7 qualities to adequate housing, or the 7 fundamental pillars. So it must be secure. It must provide availability to basic services, drinking water, sanitation, heating, lighting. It must be affordable. And so housing costs should not be a barrier to anyone being able to meet their other basic needs, such as food, and costs should be protected against unreasonable increases. I almost made a commentary on that because that's not what we have been seeing, right? Housing must be habitable. So dwellings should have adequate space for the inhabitants, be properly maintained, provide protection from the elements and threats to health and well-being. Housing must be accessible for people of all levels of ability. Housing must be in a location that's close to employment and basic social services. And then number 7 is that housing needs to be culturally adequate. Now, this is all listed on the Canadian Human Rights Commission website, again, and you can go right to the ICESCR website about this. But I just wanted you to think about this. I mean, I think sometimes we need a change of thinking. And I have, again, observed council meetings where there are people sitting on our council who, just earlier this year, presented a motion where they were suggesting, the motion asked that, for example, the shelter, the lodge that here is in the urban ward of St. Stephen, that it be moved outside the boundaries of the Municipal District of St. Stephen. Now, I'm not sure if you know what the map of St. Stephen looks like. I've been door knocking, so I do know that it extends all the way out to, Little Ridge and way out past Hills Point Road, past Oak Bay. I mean, so this idea that it was suggested that we move our homeless people who are experiencing this and in this position outside the boundaries of the Municipal District of St. Stephen. I mean, not only is it, we can talk about how it's cruel and heartless, impractical, whatever you want to say, but that is contrary to who we are as Canadians. It's a human right that we provide housing. Now, I would also say, though, that a shelter is not adequate as a solution for someone who is experiencing homelessness, right? And so that is why I am saying, along with so many other municipalities, along with the province, along with the federal government, we need to be part of the bridge housing solution that I described yesterday, the Canadian Association to End Homelessness, their bridge housing solution. You can watch yesterday's video and understand exactly what that means. That is not just the door is open, anyone can come in, et cetera, et cetera. It's really important that we understand that there needs to be adequate housing as a human right. So just think about, that, the contrast. And that's really what I just want to leave with today before I bring in some examples tomorrow. And if right away you're thinking, what does that mean if it's a right? Like, how much do we have to pay for that? I want to show you examples where the municipality doesn't actually have to front any cash at all for the capital investment to get the project off the ground or for operations. It's very important. The provinces where this is happening, BC and Ontario, and we're seeing this in some cases in New Brunswick, the province is funding the operation of that. The province does get it off the ground. The federal government is transferring in money to support it as well. But the municipalities, in every case, the municipalities were supportive of it. And so it is a big concern to me when we see councillors who are actually putting on the table the idea of exiling people who are experiencing homelessness outside of our borders and making it somebody else's problem and actually being contrary to human rights. You have a right to vote, for example. Again, when we think about like the cost, you say, well, I have a right to vote. Well, that comes with adequate polling stations, right? For example, let's just say when we're talking about cost. What if there was one, you have a right to vote, sure, but the one polling station is in Nunavut, and there's only one for the whole country, right? That's absurd. I'm giving you an absurd example. So what do we do instead? We provide polling stations that are close by. We hire poll workers. We pay for it. There are thousands of polls across the country, etc. Because of that right you have, we have to build the infrastructure out so that it's possible. You have a right to drive. Well, what do? Well, we have a Ministry of Motor Vehicles, or however you want to say it in your province, Service New Brunswick in our case, to license vehicles so that you can avail, you have training courses, you can avail yourself of that right. You have a right to education. Well, what does that mean? Is there one school in the center of the country that take it or leave it if you can? No, of course not. There's schools in our communities that are provincially funded, right, etc. So I'm giving you these examples of when something is a right, it comes with a cost, and we need to provide the infrastructure to make it available to people when we're serious about it. And all the things that I just described, your right to travel, your right to an education, your right to vote, you would say, I have a right to that, dang it. You might use stronger language than that because that is just something we expect. We say that is who we are as Canadians. Well, friend, the right to housing is included in that. And the Municipal District of St. Stephen has not taken adequate action, adequate initiative to make this happen for people experiencing homelessness, but also, as I keep saying, for people who are around the shelter experiencing the pressures of that, for people who are in the shelter. It is not an ideal sleeping environment. It's literally just a place to get out of the elements and lay your head and maybe not get robbed or worse wherever you're sleeping, right? So the shelter is essential. The shelter is an emergency. But we absolutely need to get the next step, bridge housing, as that human right for people who are experiencing homelessness. And so tomorrow, like I said, I want to, before I kind of showed you examples, I just wanted to make us aware, make us think about if you think that housing needs to be earned and it's merit-based, that's actually incorrect, right? The same way, do you think you need to earn your right to an education, earn your right to travel inside the country as a citizen, earn your right to vote? No, it was given to you, right? And so it's the same thing with housing. That is a right that every single one of the people who live inside our municipal borders has, and the municipality is not on the hook to pay for that, thankfully. And quite amazingly, actually, when you think about it, the province, the federal government, we have a national housing strategy, the things that I just talked about, the act, there's a housing advocate, province could put into that. The province needs to be advocating with the municipality. The municipality needs to be advocating with the province. That is something we need to be doing together. That is what I'm going to be doing as your mayor. And that is why it is, I got all these papers here. It is right up there. On my list of, which I can't find right now, on my list of priorities. There you go. Adequate housing. Housing for everyone. And that means starter, entry level, more apartments. We need all the housing because the immediate question becomes then, you get people out of a shelter into bridge housing. What next? Well, then yes, we need to get them into supportive housing, and people who are in supportive housing that can live independently need to move into affordable units. But this can happen quickly, as I will show you tomorrow, in a place in Peterborough called The Bridge, funded by the province of Ontario. It's happening everywhere because this crisis is exploding everywhere. But when we change our thinking about it and say housing is a human right, not something that you need to earn, then we can start working together and giving it the attention it deserves so that we solve this problem together quickly for everyone involved. All right, buildupststephen.ca. That's my website where you can learn more about my priorities, my commitments, my action plan. Take care of yourself today. Take care of anyone who needs it around you as we build up St. Stephen together. We'll talk tomorrow.